It started with a single post-one vague sentence paired with a blurry photo, but within hours, it blew up into one of the biggest online firestorms the Vance family had ever faced. Overnight, rumors linking J.D. Vance and Erika Kirk spread across social media with alarming speed. Commentators dissected screenshots, influencers added fuel, and anonymous accounts claimed they had inside sources. And caught in the center of the storm was the one person who had nothing to do with any of it: Usha Vance. The speculation grew so loud that even major outlets began reporting on unconfirmed tensions in the Vance household. People analyzed Usha's recent appearances, zoomed in on her body language, and questioned every moment she wasn't smiling. Meanwhile, JD stayed silent, fueling even more suspicion. But the twist came when insiders revealed that Usha had been dealing with pressure long before the rumors went public: pressure from donors, party strategists, and even staffers who quietly worried about the optics of Erika's growing influence behind the scenes. What no one expected was how deeply these rumors would cut. Because this wasn't just political scandal, it was personal. Usha, known for her grace and privacy, suddenly found herself being ripped apart by strangers who didn't know her, speculating about a story that may have been manufactured from the very beginning. Now, people are asking who started the rumors, why Erika's name was involved, and why JD's silence feels louder than any denial. And the internet is waiting to see whether Usha will address the storm or let the truth reveal itself on its own. The rumors didn't begin with a headline or a leak. It started with a single blurry photograph posted at 2:14 a.m. A random account barely followed shared it with the caption, "If people knew the truth about JD and Erika, everything would make sense." No context, no explanation, just those words. At first, no one paid attention. But within minutes, the image spread to political gossip pages, celebrity forums, and eventually mainstream chatter. By sunrise, it had turned into a full-on online storm. And by the time Usha Vance woke up that morning, her name was trending beside Erika Kirk's for reasons she never invited and certainly never deserved. The internet, desperate to fill in the blanks, began inventing its own storyline. JD and Erika meeting privately, one post claimed. Late-night calls between them, another insisted. Screenshots, real or manipulated, flooded timelines. Suddenly, people began piecing together old photos, analyzing the way JD looked at Erika at past events, and rewatching clips of them standing near each other at conferences. In hours, a narrative formed that had nothing to do with truth and everything to do with speculation. And at the center of it, silently enduring the firestorm, was Usha. But what made the situation worse wasn't just the rumors themselves, which was the timing. J.D. Vance, now one of the most scrutinized figures in conservative politics, had been rising quickly, gaining national attention. Every move he made was amplified. Every person he interacted with became part of a larger story. And Erika Kirk, whose own scandals had already placed her under a spotlight, was the last person Kay needed his name associated with during such a critical moment. Behind the scenes, the Vance household felt the pressure long before the public ever knew. According to insiders, Usha had sensed growing tension for weeks, not because of JD's actions, but because of what she described as the atmosphere around him. Donors, advisors, and political strategists had begun whispering concerns about optics, about associations, about who could complicate JD's upward trajectory. And Erika's name had come up more than once. Usha, always composed and level-headed, had dismissed the whispers at first. She trusted her husband completely. Their marriage wasn't built on public perception, it was built on years of partnership. She had known JD long before politics, long before power. They had lived through struggles far deeper than public rumors. But what unsettled her wasn't anything her husband had done. It was everything happening around him. People began telling her Erika showed up too often, that she lingered near JD at political events, that she inserted herself into conversations she didn't need to be part of, that she sought influence in places that weren't her domain. Usha had always kept her distance from political games. But even she noticed that Erika had a way of drifting into circles where she didn't belong, quiet enough to seem accidental, strategic enough to feel intentional. Still, Usha stayed calm. Until the night the photo went viral. JD was out of town at a fundraiser. Usha was home with their children when her phone began buzzing nonstop. Friends texted her. Staffers called. Her sister even asked, "Are you okay?" When she opened social media and saw her name trending with Erika's, her breath caught in her throat. Not because she believed the rumors, but because she knew what they meant. Perception becomes reality faster than truth can catch it. She didn't panic. She just sat still, absorbing the fact that her private life, her marriage, was now fair game for strangers to pick apart. And the worst part? JD hadn't released a statement. He hadn't addressed the rumors. He hadn't even posted on social media. His silence, meant to avoid fueling gossip, only made the speculation louder. The political world, meanwhile, spun the story into a frenzy. Commentators speculated whether the rumors were planted by opponents. Strategists debated if Erika had become a liability for the party. Donors expressed concern that JD's rising star could be derailed by association. Even staffers began quietly pulling Usha aside, trying to reassure her, not realizing how condescending the gesture felt. She didn't need reassurance. She needed truth. But truth wasn't what the internet wanted. One insider revealed that Usha had already been dealing with behind-the-scenes pressure long before the rumors reached the public. Some party figures had suggested JD distance himself from Erika due to her recent controversies. Not because of impropriety, but because her name brought instability. It didn't matter whether JD had done anything wrong. The perception of association was enough to tarnish him. And now, with rumors swirling, Usha was pressured from every angle, publicly by gossip, privately by political operatives, and emotionally by the silent weight of being thrust into a role she had never wanted. People began dissecting her recent public appearances. They noted that she looked tired in one clip, that she wasn't smiling in a photo from a week earlier, that she had been absent from JD's last event. Each detail, no matter how innocent, became evidence of strain. The internet created a storyline out of snapshots and silence. But the truth about Usha was much simpler than the narrative. Being spun about her, she wasn't. Breaking. She was thinking. She knew Erika's history. She had watched the scandals unfold. She had seen how Erika's relationships with other political families became tangled, complicated, and sometimes destructive. She never disliked Erika, but she never trusted her influence. Not because of rumors, because of patterns. Usha understood power. Not the loud kind that plays out in public, but the quiet kind. The kind that comes from information, alliances, and proximity. And she had seen Erika get too close to circles she shouldn't be in. People told her not to worry, that JD and Erika just crossed paths professionally. But Usha wasn't worried about JD. She was worried about Erika's motives. When the rumors went viral, Usha didn't react with jealousy or fear. She reacted with clarity. She recognized this wasn't an accident. This was orchestrated. Someone wanted to pull Erika's name into JD's orbit again. Someone wanted to create suspicion where there was none. Someone wanted Usha rattled. And that meant someone wanted JD vulnerable. Ush also knew something the public didn't. The photo that went viral, a blurry shot of JD and a woman who looked like Erika, wasn't taken recently. It wasn't even clear. A high-resolution analysis proved the woman wasn't Erika at all. But once a rumor starts, the truth becomes irrelevant. People believe what they want to believe. The deeper Usha looked into the situation, the more she realized the rumors weren't random. Someone had a purpose. Someone wanted to weaken JD at a critical moment. Someone wanted to exploit Erika's name, not because of her, but because of the chaos attached to her. As the night wore on, Usha sat in silence, scrolling through speculation she never asked for and commentary she didn't deserve. But one thought kept circling her mind, a thought more terrifying than the rumor itself. What if the rumor wasn't started to hurt her? What if it was started to test JD? Or worse, what if someone wanted Erika and JD to look connected for a reason? Because once the public believes something, the truth becomes a weapon, and Usha Vance was suddenly caught at the center of a storm someone else had engineered. The morning after the rumors first spread, Usha Vance stepped into a world that no longer felt familiar. Every notification on her phone carried another opinion about her marriage. Every headline used her name as a bargaining chip. Every whisper in political circles seemed to circle back to that single blurry photograph. And although she maintained her calm exterior, the pressure building around her was impossible to ignore. She dropped her children off at school like she always did, pretending not to notice the stares from parents in the parking lot. Some offered sympathetic smiles. Others avoided eye contact entirely. A few whispered. She didn't need to hear the words. She knew what they were saying. Rumors have a way of reshaping the air around you. Even when you know the truth is still on your side, by late afternoon, the whispers had reached Washington. Journalists began calling JD's office for comment. Staffers tried to control the flood, insisting there would be no statement. But silence only fed the fire. Commentators on political shows brought it up with smirking caution, framing it as public concern rather than gossip. Influencers posted speculative videos that racked up millions of views. Twitter threads turned assumptions into timelines. And every time Erika Kirk's name appeared next to JD's, the narrative twisted tighter. Usha's friends urged her to stay offline, but she refused. She wanted to understand the force she was up against. And the more she read, the more she realized this wasn't an ordinary rumor. It didn't behave like something random. It was too calculated, too synchronized, too perfectly timed. Several political profiles shared the same wording within minutes of each other. If true, this raises serious questions. Accounts that rarely commented on conservative family life suddenly had long threads prepared. Even anonymous political operatives' accounts that insiders recognized as belonging to staffers began amplifying the story. Something about it felt orchestrated. The deeper Usha dug, the more she saw the fingerprints of a coordinated attack, not on Herb, but on JD. For days, JD had been preparing for a major political announcement, something that would shift his position on the national stage, something important enough that opponents might want to stop it. Usha realized the timing wasn't accidental. Whoever leaked the rumor wanted it released at a moment when JD couldn't afford a distraction. The question wasn't whether the rumor was malicious. The question was who benefited from it while Usha processed the political side. She still had to manage the personal fallout. Her home, once a refuge, felt surrounded by noise. And the worst part was JD's silence. It wasn't that he didn't care, he cared far too much, but advisors around him insisted. They couldn't address gossip without elevating it. They told him to stay strategic, to let the news cycle fade, to focus on the bigger picture. But Usha wasn't concerned about strategy. She was concerned about the quote, weaponization of her marriage. Behind closed doors, JD was furious, not at her, not at the rumor, but at the sheer violation of it all. He hated seeing Usha dragged into a scandal she had no connection to. He hated that Erika's name had been attached to his without consent. And he hated that the people advising him didn't understand the emotional cost. He wanted to defend his wife publicly, to shut down the rumor with a single clear statement. But every advisor, strategist, and donor contact around him said the same thing. Don't touch it. Don't feed it. But Usha knew something. They danced in single quotes. Silence does not protect the innocent. It only empowers the people who started the rumor. While JD wrestled with political pressure, Usha faced a quieter kind of crisis. A crisis that came from being watched, judged, and analyzed for reactions she didn't even know she was giving. People dissected her posture during a recent appearance. They speculated her serious expression meant the rumor was real. No one considered she simply didn't feel like smiling while strangers dismantled her marriage online. Behind the scenes, just a strain grew worse. Donors began calling JD's team, asking if the rumor could threaten his future. Senators sent friendly warnings advising him to control the narrative. One strategist even suggested that Usha appear more publicly supportive to bury the speculation. That comment nearly pushed Usha over the edge. She didn't want to become a political prop. She wanted her family protected. The rumor wasn't just viral, it had become weaponized, but the situation became even more complicated when new information surfaced. A reporter reached out to Usha privately, claiming to know where the rumor originated. The reporter didn't share details, but they suggested the rumor didn't start with political opponents. It didn't come from trolls or anonymous accounts. It came from someone connected to Erika. Not Erika herself, but someone in her orbit. A former TPUSA staffer, someone with motive, someone who had been part of one of Erika's recent internal scandals and needed a way to redirect the conversation, the reporter said. If this rumor wasn't planted intentionally, then it spread exactly the way someone wanted it to. Usha felt a chill. She wasn't surprised that Erika's name carried chaos she had seen. Erika's scandals swallow entire conservative circles before, but she never imagined that chaos could reach her own marriage. She didn't want to believe that someone connected to Erika could deliberately drag JD into something like this. But given everything happening with TPUSA, nothing seemed impossible anymore. And just when the situation couldn't get worse, it did. A new set of screenshots surfaced. Not the original blurry photo, but an alleged message claiming JD and Erika had exchanged late-night texts. The image was vague, the usernames blurred, but that didn't matter to the internet. The rumor evolved. Now it wasn't just one photo, it was an entire web of fabricated evidence. Usha saw it for what it was instantly. The screenshots were fake. The timestamps didn't match JD's travel schedule. The layout didn't match his messaging app. Even the font looked wrong. But facts never stop a wildfire. People wanted a scandal. They wanted commentary. They wanted drama between the polished, brilliant Usha and the controversial, ever-present Erika. Narratives grow faster than truth. JD's advisors told him again to stay silent. But Usha knew silence was no longer an option. Not for her. Not for their marriage. Not when her dignity was being chipped away by strangers who believed fiction more easily than fact. She also knew something else, something she hadn't said out loud. This wasn't just a rumor. It felt like a warning, a political threat disguised as gossip. A strategic hit meant to destabilize JD before he could rise further. And the involvement of Erika's name wasn't just messy, it was revealing. Whoever started this wanted two things: tie JD to controversy. Tie Erika to him. Make Usha look isolated. Create fractures where none existed. The pressure on her wasn't just emotional, it was tactical. And if she didn't act soon, the narrative would harden into something far more dangerous than gossip. Public perception. She realized she needed to make a move, not for optics, not for politics, but for truth. Because people were shaping her marriage without her consent. And if she didn't speak now, they would keep going. She had to decide whether to remain silent or reshape the story herself. And that decision would change everything. Vance had always been a woman who chose her moments carefully. Throughout JD's political rise, she stayed grounded, composed, and unbothered by the noise that came with public life. But this situation was different. This time, the noise was directed at her marriage, her family, and her character. And as the rumor continued to twist into new shapes, more malicious, more invasive, more absurd, she realized that silence was no longer a symbol of strength. It had become permission. By the third day of the viral frenzy, the pressure around her reached a boiling point. Political commentators had stopped pretending to discuss the rumor with journalistic caution. They spoke with confidence, with insinuation, with manufactured certainty. They treated the rumor as if it were a puzzle to solve, rather than a lie to dismiss. And no matter how baseless it was, people believed it because belief spreads faster than truth. Usha watched as new narratives emerged. Threads claimed Erika had secretly visited JD's office weeks prior. Others claimed JD had been seen acting distant from Usha. Photos from unrelated events were dragged into the conversation, reframed as proof. Influencers who had never met the Vances suddenly became body language experts. Every blink, every pause, every gesture from Usha's past interviews now served as evidence. But the worst part wasn't the public speculation. It was the private pressure behind closed doors. The calls grew more urgent. A top-party donor warned JD that external narratives can destroy internal momentum. A strategist advised him to prepare a family unity appearance. 1. Senior official, a man who had never even met Usha, suggested she stand beside JD at his next event to project solidarity. As if her marriage was a stage, as if she were a prop. As if her life belonged to their story. As if her life belonged to their story. Usha listened politely, then ended the call without saying a word. She sat in silence for a long time, staring at the wall, absorbing the reality that people who didn't know her felt entitled to shape her reaction, her expression, her presence. They weren't concerned about her. They were concerned about the optics of her dot. Meanwhile, JD was stuck between Rawls, the husband who wanted to protect his wife, and the politician being told to stay strategically neutral. Every conversation between them that week carried a strain neither of them could hide. Not because they doubted each other, but because the world demanded they perform roles they never agreed to play. On the fourth night, Usha reached her breaking point. She was sitting in the living room, scrolling through yet another thread attacking her, when she came across a live stream where the host casually said, "You can tell Usha is insecure. If she weren't, she'd have spoken by now." That struck deeper than any rumor because it wasn't insecurity keeping her quiet. It was dignity. And dignity, she realized, was being used against her. She turned off her phone, walked into JD's study, and closed the door behind her. JD looked up immediately, worry in his expression. He had been reading reports all day, analyzing numbers, gauging the impact. But the moment he saw her face, he pushed the papers aside. "We can't let them do this," she said quietly. JD nodded, but his advisor's warnings echoed in his mind. "If we respond," he said slowly, "they'll keep dragging us back into this. They're already dragging us," she said, "and we're letting them." He leaned back in his chair, rubbing his forehead. It was clear the silence was costing him too. He wasn't ignoring her. He was trying to protect her in the only political way he knew how. But politics was not marriage, and marriage was not a strategy. Usha reached into her bag and pulled out a printed, screenshot the blurry photo that started the rumor. She placed it on the desk. "This woman isn't Erika," she said. "This rumor isn't true, and this attack isn't random." JD looked at the photo, then at her. "Someone wants this story to exist," she continued. "Someone wants to shake people's trust in you, and they're using me to do it." JD's jaw tightened. He knew she was right. The timing, the coordination, the speed, none of it looked organic. This wasn't gossip spreading. It was gossip deployed. "What do you want to do?" he asked. For the first time since the rumor began, Usha had a clear answer. "I want to speak. Not for them. Not for politics. For us." JD felt something shift inside him. Not just relief, but respect. Deep, grounding respect. She wasn't demanding a statement from him. She wasn't demanding he defend himself. She was claiming her own voice. But before she acted, she wanted to understand one thing: who started it and why. Over the next 48 hours, Usha quietly reached out to trusted individuals, people who had no political agenda, no desire for spotlight, and no connection to Erika's orbit. Some were journalists, some were staffers, some were friends. And the story that emerged from their combined information is far more troubling than she expected. Someone connected to one of Erika's recent scandals had allegedly leaked the original photo, not because they had anything against JD personally, but because the scandal surrounding Erika had reached a boiling point. They needed a distraction. They needed a narrative shift. They needed someone else's image to blur into Erika's so she wasn't standing alone in her own. Controversyjd had been the perfect target. High profile, rising influence. A family man with a spotless public marriage. Someone whose reputation could overshadow Erika's scandal if people believed he was involved. The rumor wasn't about JD at all. It was about Erika. But because JD was tied into it, Usha became the collateral damage. The revelation made Usha's blood boil, not because she blamed Erika directly, but because people in Erika's world were willing to weaponize someone else's marriage to save themselves. They weren't just reckless. They were calculating. And they didn't care who they hurt in the process by the time Usha finished gathering the truth. She knew exactly what she needed to say. Not a defensive statement. Not an emotional plea. Not a performance. She wanted to remind people of something simple, something obvious, something that had been lost in the noise. The truth has weight, and she was done letting lies float above it. The next morning, she recorded a short message. No production team, no script, no makeup, just us using plainly, directly, and without fear. She didn't attack Erika. She didn't blame staffers. She didn't even mention the rumor directly. Instead, she said this: "You don't get to rewrite my marriage because you enjoy a story." The message went viral instantly, not because it was dramatic, but because it was real. It was the first honest voice in a sea of speculation. And for the first time, the public shifted. The narrative cracked. Commentators softened. Supporters rallied. Even critics admitted she handled it with clarity and integrity. Her message accomplished something that political strategy never could. It made the rumor collapse under its own emptiness. Because people finally saw the truth. Behind the noise, they saw Usha, not as a political wife. Not as a trending topic, but as a woman defending her family with dignity, intelligence, and strength. And as the storm began to fade, one final truth became clear. The rumor had never been about JD's marriage. It had been a test of Usha, a test she passed with a power the rumors creators never expected. Now, the only people under pressure were the ones who started the lie. Rumors are easy to create. They take seconds to post, minutes to spread, and hours to twist into something unrecognizable. But what this story proved loudly, painfully, unmistakably is that rumors only have power when the truth stays silent. Usha Vance didn't speak to win an argument or gain public sympathy. She spoke because lies had crossed a line into her home, her marriage, and her dignity. And the moment she reclaimed her voice, everything shifted. Her message was a reminder that not every scandal is real. Not every screenshot is truth, and not every narrative deserves attention. Sometimes the loudest stories are the most empty, and sometimes the quietest person is the one who ends it. If this story made you rethink how fast online chaos becomes fact, then don't let it stop here. Share it, talk about it, because behind every rumor, there's a motive. Behind every viral moment, there's someone pulling strings. And behind every targeted smear, there's a person who didn't ask to be part of a manufactured narrative. Usha didn't fight with anger. She fought with clarity. And in a world where lies spread faster than truth, clarity is rebellion. Stay alert. Question everything. And remember, stories like this aren't just entertainment. They're warnings. Entertainment. They're warnings.